How you doing, guys? I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Shout out to all the subscribers and gratitude to anybody new. Welcome along. So, this news is a couple of days old now, but obviously Subriel Matías and Panda part ways. Some people have speculated this a couple of weeks ago, but now it's official now. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about maybe potentially who's next to train Matias, what the implications are, and what it looks like from both sides, really, because, you know, the trainer, when fighters leave trainers, and look, it's really only one way. It's like you don't even really get a trainer that leaves a fighter. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, and I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's a very slim time that does happen, and you know, the fighters are always the ones, you know, they're calling the shots. Of course they are, they're the fighters. But it looks like, you know, when the trainer gets left, look, they're the problem, you know, that everything gets blamed on them. And you know, it seems to me like Panda, you know, he's a decent guy. It seems like I really enjoy his interviews. He's a humble guy, he knows his boxing, and he really cares. And really caring in being a trainer is actually a massive part of it. You know, obviously you need the skills, you need the application, and you need the hard work and the commitment and all of that stuff. You know, it's a lot goes into a boxing trainer, and I'm speaking on this because, you know, I train some beginners, nothing too crazy, but I'm around a lot of trainers, and I see the amount of work that goes in at a very high level, and you know, day in, day out, all the extra stuff outside of just training. You know, they are father figures or mother figures. But for this case, obviously, it's like you look at Panda, and I see and feel how much he's put into this, right? And now obviously the performances as well speak for themselves. He actually was in the Dukenbaev corner, which we'll get onto Freddie Trinidad later, because, you know, a lot of people, including myself, would like to see him back. But the question I have is, why did he leave him in the first place? Do you know what I mean? Freddie Trinidad was in the corner for the Matias Hawkins fight, which he looked like an animal in that fight. He looked so athletic. His jab looked really sharp, crisp, and just like he looked, no, I don't want to say unbeatable, but his athleticism and his conditioning and his jab, as I mentioned, it looked frightening in that fight. Then the Dukenbaev fight, and I still think that fight will grow really well as more fights he has, which it has already. He's won 5 on the bounce, I think, Dukenbaev. Really good fighter. That's one of Matias. You could argue those two are Matias' best performances. The Ponce fight probably is in there, and maybe the Ergashev fight. Now, Panda, as I said, was in the Dukenbaev corner. He's absolutely tightened up Matias' defense just by simply getting him to keep his hands up, and he's gotten a bit more upper body movement. A lot of people think Matias is a punching bag, but you know what? He blocks a lot of shots and he moves a lot of shots, and his defense is a bit underrated, to be honest with you. He has been reckless, don't get me wrong, but when he really is committed to it, which he was in the Ergashev fight, and a little bit in the Ponce fight too, but more so the Ergashev fight, you know, he was disciplined with it. But obviously the Para fight was just a complete, I don't even know. It's hard to put your finger on that fight, really, isn't it? But obviously he's been in Mexico training hard in the high altitude. Has that gotten a bit much? I know he's away from his family. I know he's a family man. In fact, I just saw a few days ago he posted a picture, I'm not sure where it was, with him and his kids. And the first thing I noticed was the youngest who's down there that looks just like him. Like, look at the energy. That's like a mini version of him. I was like, if he had that energy in the Parrot fight, he might have won. I'm obviously half joking, but no, he loves his family. Obviously, he wants to be around them, and when you're not around the family and you're in Mexico. And I want to give a shout out to Miracle Boy Boxing. I watched his video, and you know, I really enjoy his channel because he really knows like a lot of the deeper side to who trained with what, you know, and in the lower weights as well. So shout out to you, Miracle Boy. And I'll leave the link for his video up here, because you know, I learned a lot from that video about some of the trainers I'm speaking on. I knew Freddie Trinidad was in there, but Roman Rocky Martinez he brought into the mix, which I obviously am fully aware of him. and his fighting. I used to watch him back in the day on HBO. I know he's a world champion for Puerto Rico as well. He's training right now, and he threw him into the mix. But there's another trainer, his name is Anthony Otero, and he trained the Arroyo brothers. Okay, now those are back in the HBO days that I used to watch as well. And he's been training Matias since the beginning of his career, so he's another option as well. But back to Panda, because, you know, as I said, trainers do take the brunt of all of this, even though it might not have been anything he's done. Matias might just simply be, you know, had enough of the high altitude, which, if that is true, that is a bit of a concern, because obviously if he wants to be back in training in Puerto Rico, there were some distractions in the para fight. Let's be honest, a lot of people were speaking on that before the fight. They were saying something that was a little off, and, like, you know, so many people, even with the whole Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, there was people talking about the weirdness of that before the fight. So then you obviously had the sightings in the club, or there's been channels, shout out to Offensive Stance, he spoke about that Matias he knew people that said that he was in the clubs and stuff like that, and he definitely didn't fight like he was, you know, like full throttle, which was disappointing, to be honest with you. It's very, very disappointing to see that lack of ferocity. And Paro fought a great fight outside of the rabbit punches, you know, that was disappointing as well. But the question is like, obviously, who's going to train him, but who's he going to fight? I was actually going to make a video literally a couple of days before this one, like what's next it was going to be called, because, like, obviously Regis Prograis is fighting Jack Cattrall, so that fight's off the table. Then you have, I was just thinking, I made a video about the 140-pound division and how many southpaws were in it. And I know Matias has been a southpaw crusher, really. But the southpaws that he has crushed have come to fight him. And I actually, the keys to victory, one of the keys to victory I said about Paro, I was like, don't try to knock Matias out, because you can't. And the biggest problem that every fighter has had is they try to outman him a little bit. You know, Drew Kembayev did that. He's a southpaw. He obviously got stopped. I think it was the 8th or 9th. I can't remember. Ergashev did the same thing. There's other southpaws I can't think off the top of my head. Obviously, Paro is one. But if you don't try to knock him out, and you are a slick-ish boxer, and you can box off the back foot and move, then you've got, you know, a chance to, you know, kind of disrupt his rhythm a little bit. And so if you look at the southpaws in the division right now, well, Alberto Puello is, I guess he's now been elevated to some kind of, maybe the WBC champ, I think, but that, I wouldn't try to fight him yet. I think Matias needs to get his mojo back a little bit. We need to see just like kind of what he sounds like from a desire perspective, because obviously, if he's carrying on with the same fight as in the Paro fight, I mean, that's just not, you're not going to want to put him in there with someone that's going to be tricky, moving around, clever boxing and stuff like that. You know, he needs to be on point. He needs to have that. Personally, these are just my opinions, as always. You know, I'd love to hear from you guys, as always. I'm always curious and always get a lot of really interesting feedback, which helps me learn, which is the whole point. But in the Hawkins fight, like, that kind of athleticism, I've spoken about his athleticism. It's really underrated. He's really fast on his feet, and he can move really quickly and shut the gap, cut the ring off. You know, where was that if that in the Paro fight? Well, that's a different person, completely different person. So, you know, but in terms of who he can fight next, I think probably the matchmaking will be really important. In terms of, you don't want him to get somebody that just comes in just to win, do you? Or do you want it to be someone that's kind of relatively well known but has a style that suits him? Or would you be happy with him just coming in and getting a win and getting back on it? Because at the end of the day, he doesn't have, like, what, he's 33? He doesn't have that many years left. So every fight is a camp. And I know he's had some hard camps before. 10-month camp, I think the Ponce fight, I know it got postponed a little bit, but, like, man, that's like, you know, and not to mention, I was gonna make, I probably still am gonna make a video about Subriel Matías. It's called The Gladiator, and it's like more of a music artistic piece. It's gonna take a bit of time, but it's definitely coming down the pipeline. But Gladiator style, right? His style, like when you fight like that, You know, like, I don't care who you are. I don't care how tough your chin is or how big your heart is. He's a human being with a neurological system up here, right, that can be damaged. I'm not saying he is damaged at all, by the way. But on top of that, it's the wear and tear on you physically, not mentally, because I think he's mentally tough anyway. Well, he is mentally tough, but supremely mentally tough. But he's still a human being at the end of the day. And you know, that daily grind and just bringing yourself through all that and then sacrificing away from your family, you know, it can add up. And I do wonder if that's been a part of it. And he's just like, no, I'm going to train in Puerto Rico, but I won't have any distractions. I don't know. I'm just speaking out loud. I'd love to hear from you. I know he did an interview recently, but it's in Spanish. I couldn't really understand it. I understand it a tiny little bit here and there, but not enough to really piece together what was going on. So if you guys found anything out from there that was interesting, that we was talking about Panda, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, because I know they were talking about him a little bit, but I couldn't really decipher what was being said. But it was good to see him back, and it was good to see him back out talking again, because I've been very curious to see what he's saying. Does he want to keep going with this, like, in full ferocity? Because, as I said, his style, you can only, like, you know, it's just like he's just full on. But with regards to Panda and one thing I think was probably missing, and I don't think whatever he's told him, because it would have really mattered, but his jab, he needs to get back on his jab. He's got a really good underrated jab, and that was really missing in the power fight, big time. You know, on top of a few other things like the clinching or the lack of clinching. But Para was doing a good job of moving him back, breaking his base, right, which is a big part of the clinching. But there was just no ferocity from Matias at all. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know who you think should train him. You know, Freddie Trinidad, obviously. Those two fights were great with him, but why did he leave him in the first place is my question. I know Panda came in, as I say, so they were crossover. Was he just passing him off? Is he going to get passed back? I don't know. It's really interesting. I hope, you know, I wish him the best, and I hope he does get with a trainer that really cares about him and that really understands the balance between him and his family and training and the distractions. It's going to be very, very, very important to kind of try to manage all that. See, here's another thing about trainers, is like, you have to manage these things. It's not just pad work, and okay, of course you have to do all that, and that's really important, and that's where Panda's probably, you know, excels at. But then, I'm not saying he doesn't excel at all the father figure type, but you have to be able to go, look, man, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that, and does Matias want him to do this? And it's like, at some point, trainers can't, you have to do it yourself. You know what I mean? If he's telling them, look, don't hang out with these guys, because I know Panda made a thing about it. He's like, you know, all the artists, he doesn't like all that stuff. And I don't blame him. I don't love it either, to be honest with you, because it's got nothing to do with boxing and fighting. Get in the ring and fight. And it's okay to have a ring entrance, but that was too much, wasn't it? I thought. But look, it's complicated. I wish them both well. Panda's obviously going to be fine. He's got a William Zepeda, great trainer. You know, maybe it's just a question of they just parted ways and they just, like, you know, at ease with it, and that happens. That's okay too. You know, sometimes I feel for trainers because it looks bad on them. You know, it looks like, oh, you know, Panda wasn't really doing this and that, but it's like, because they leave them. As I said, it's hard to do it the other way around, where the trainers are leaving the fighters. Anyway, I've just been rambling a little bit. I wanted to get this video out today. It's Friday today. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. As always, I really appreciate anybody that stayed this long in the video. Peace and love. Thank you very much. And if you are new, maybe hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, want more videos, and hit the like button. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Porque cuando tú estás seguro, porque cuando tú estás seguro, de lo que tú das y tú eres, no le temes a los riesgos. Boxing.